Hi, everybody. It's PJ Kwong once again with another of my favorite skaters. This time it's Eric Radford. We're talking about a three-time Olympic medalist, a two-time world champion, and just musical genius and basically pair skating god. So welcome, Eric Radford, to this conversation. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you for the warm welcome.
You're welcome. So let's talk a little bit. I'm giving all of my guests the opportunity to sort of comment on what is happening out there in sort of the broader social context. It's a very interesting couple of weeks in terms of the world coming to grips with the Black Lives Matter movement and with racism and I think homophobia and I think all kinds of other things that we need to really be looking at as a society. So you and I talked about before we went on air that you wanted to address this a little bit. So let's give that as the starting point for this conversation.
I feel like there's an era of change in like the whole world right now, and I feel like the like different like causes sort of come up throughout like history, and I know that I'm more familiar with LGBTQ plus movement than I am with the anti-racist that's happening right now. But it's been just a rising of a level of awareness, and I feel like that's a big goal of this. And it is very difficult for me to talk about, and it's sometimes I find it difficult to navigate. And I've been doing just a lot of reading, a lot of having a lot of discussions. I went down for the protest here. There was a queer march against racism and for Black Lives Matter here in Montreal, and I went down, took part in that, and I've made donations to a few different causes for Black Lives Matter. But when it comes to actually speaking about it, I haven't had a lot of, I guess, exposure, like run-ins with it. And I feel like with any of these, any issue that comes up, like the way to improve it is just at the base level to raise the awareness and the education. And I feel like that is what's happening. It's happening like in a very powerful, like at home, like in your face type of way. And it's really, I think, caused a lot of people, especially for me, to just stop and really think about it in a way that I don't think people have, And it was, it's a difficult, the videos and the incidences that I see, like I think they deeply affect everybody. Nobody can watch that and I think just cast it aside. And I think that it's creating a huge wave of change, and I think that that's what's needed, and that's how these things change at that base level, that where it needs to happen.
I often say that you cannot have true change without chaos. Because we need everybody to come together. And, Eric, I often think about you, and I was thinking about you over these last couple of weeks. When you and I did a podcast together, you shared with me the fact that you weren't really sure kind of who you were and what was going on, and you were in about grade 6. And as you were being pelted with things, you could see a teacher watching you out of the corner of their eye. And I wonder often about that teacher, if that teacher had been videotaped standing idly by while you were being victimized, kind of where things would be at. I feel really encouraged about the fact that so many things are being deemed no longer acceptable. And that's a very powerful statement. Whether we have all of the answers or not, we just know that we can't accept where we're at anymore. And I think that that's kind of the most important thing. Does your being a gay married man, there's your adorable husband, coming up to your first anniversary, does that impact perhaps how you see things in a social context in the world?
I think, I mean, I think I want to be very just careful with how I word things. And
okay.
I think that I would consider myself a very empathetic person,
Yeah,
And
I would say that too.
I've been having a lot of discussions about this, and you know, we are talking about at what limit is there for your empathy, and you can, I think you can always empathize to a certain degree, but then you, unless you go through it, and unless you are, you know, unless you've experienced it, you will never be able to truly know. And I just think that's part of human nature. And um, I've had my difficult situations, and you know, I've done my best to like learn from them, and I've been lucky enough to have a platform to tell my story for you know, in the sort of LGBTQ community. Um, but I think that it's something that I have an awareness of, you know, being a gay man and the struggles that we've been through in society. But I think that it needs to be taken, like my own awareness has taken us a step up with everything that's going on in the world, and with like all the movement that's happening right now. And I think that, you know, having that empathy is like a good start. But you know, I've seen it in myself that there's another level that's like been open to me now that I need to exercise and develop. And I think that it's the same for, I think it's the same for everybody. It's something that everybody needs.
You need to walk before you can run. You know,
Exactly. Yeah.
here's a great comment from Terry Rance, one of our biggest fans, both of us. Seeing so many hate-filled people is disheartening, but so many good people out there, that's also given me faith. It gives me hope. I have to say that as far as being one of those people who is considered empathetic and is considered sort of a champion of social causes, it's really exciting for me to know that Voss Water made a donation in your name to a Montreal hospital. What did that mean to you? And tell me a little bit about that.
You know, in difficult times, and especially when it's in something that's involving the whole world, like the pandemic, or you know, big parts of society, you know, you sometimes you feel helpless or powerless, that you can't really make a change. And you know, it's funny. There's like a lot of comparisons. There is a comparison from like skating, where you have this goal and you can't just jump to the goal. You have to take these little steps, and it's those little steps and small changes that happen individually on a large scale that end up making the change. And Voss has done so many. They do such great work with you know, giving exposure to different movements, or making donations like this one. And you know, especially with how many important issues are all happening at the same time right now, it can be easy to forget that there's still those, you know, frontline workers that are, you know, dealing with very intense situations every day. And you know, to be able to help a little bit through Voss and with Voss, it feels good to be able to try and you know, like that last comment, to just add a little bit of that positivity to.
Oops. We've got Eric on a bit of a freeze at the moment, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to continue. Eric, if you can hear me, just jump out and jump back in, and we can see if we can make this work. In the meantime, if people have any comments or questions that they want to talk about, let's see if we can get this back. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we're going to stop this and we're going to start again. I'm going to disconnect, and let's see if we can get this back on track. See you in a couple of seconds. If you have any favorite questions about Eric, and of course partner Megan DeHamel, We're going to talk a little bit later about Battle of the Blades. We're going to talk also about what it's like to be an Olympian and what it's like to be an Olympic medalist. And Eric has won 3 medals. Let's just see if we can get Eric back. And there's some crazy weather out there, which may be impacting some of this. I know that I just had to close my window because it was crazy. So let's see. Let's see what we can do. In the meantime, talk amongst yourselves. I want to say that I want to thank everybody for all the support that they've given me throughout all of this process and all of these different Facebook Lives that we're doing. Oh, I just got a message. Okay. Eric's power went out in his building. Let's see. Well, that was fancy.
The power.
Your power went out.
The power has gone out in my building.
Are you on your phone now?
I'm on my phone now, yes.
That's great. Thank you so much for coming back. I've just been talking to myself, people wondering what was going on, and you were in at least an adorable frozen position as opposed to that sometimes happens with freezing. So let's talk a little bit about skating, because, it's true that everybody's trying to get back, sort of back on some kind of equilibrium. And for you and for me and for those people who are watching, equilibrium for us is definitely about skating. So there's this guy with the medals, but really it started here on that day in Pyeongchang. Let's talk a little bit about your experience at the Olympics.
Oh, it's one of the highlights of my life, I think. And it was, when looking back, of course, when I can see it from beginning to end, I can see how everything was really falling into the right place for Megan and I to have those performances while we were there. When we arrived, we were just in the right mindset. Compared to our first Olympics, we both felt more at ease. So we felt like we were at home rather than sort of far away in a different place. And I think that we just had so much more experience to draw upon, and that definitely helped, in those moments when we were out there and you're nervous. But I think we just had the confidence to know that we were going to be able to do it. I mean, in terms of results and everything that happened, being able to stand on top of the podium with some of my best friends and sing the national anthem, it's something I will never forget. It will be a highlight for my life, for the rest of my life, a highlight of my life for the rest of my life. And then, I think that there's a video out there of the moment when we found out that we won the bronze medal. And, you see Aliona and Bruno, and, she finally wins the gold. And then you have the Chinese, who are so amazing, but they're so disappointed. And then Megan and I are just thrilled to be on the podium again. And it's one of my favorite sporting moments in history, because it captures every dimension of sport. And I remember, one of the first things that I said to Megan after we settled down a little bit is, oh, we get to stand on the podium again, not even once at an Olympics, but we get to stand up there twice. And that was another incredible moment. And, that was a huge sort of launch for Megan and I, and it's brought us a lot of opportunities. And not every athlete kind of gets that fairy tale ending to their career. And I feel extremely lucky that, our last performance of our, competitive careers, we, hit that throw quad. That was the last triplets I ever did. And I got to land it on one foot, which was a big struggle for me that season. So I'm really happy I got to leave it that way. And, we got to end it on basically the highest note possible.
It's so wonderful, because that triplets is really one of the things that put you on the map. You were a team that when you first started out, you decided to sort of make your mark as far as doing technical elements. I mean, you had the other stuff too, but your real the arsenal was thick with your own individual elements, which was what was amazing. Let's go back a little bit too to some of the things that were challenging for me to watch. This which resulted in this.
Oh,
Um, People need to understand, and of course, this. People need to understand that pair skating is not for the faint of heart. Can you talk a little bit about the danger?
well, I mean, you have another human being flying around you. You know, you're like launching her into the air, and you know, I think that a broken nose is almost like a rite of passage for a pair boy, and I still got like the bump here to always remind me of that moment. Um, you know, I think that, and there's kind of like a saying in, you know, in figure skating that pair girls are the, not necessarily the craziest, but will definitely be one of some of the fiercest characters you'll ever meet. And what I find so funny is that if I think about, you know, when you go to a competition, if you were to put all of the pair girls in the room, there's a very particular type of energy, and they have a particular type of fearlessness, you know. And I think that it's just such a unique discipline. It's so acrobatic, but then it can be like beautiful, and there can be that sensuality there at the same time. And you know, the other aspect of pair skating that I love is just that it has such a wide range of different types of elements, you know, and that exercise all different parts of, you know, the athletic side of figure skating, whether it's strength, endurance, you know, like that sort of fast twitch jumping energy. um, yeah, it's such a cool discipline.
Do you, you know what? All of the technical gremlins are out today. Can you hear me still?
Yes.
This is supposed to help with the echoing that I'm sure is happening out there in the world. So, what made you and Megan click right off the top? I know that you guys told me that you were both, you know, super good friends, and that you were best friends, in fact, and that was one of the things that Megan loved about you. Um, Tell me why you think it worked.
There we go.
Haha, we did it. Eric, look at us. We've had every gremlin possible so far.
I mean, in the beginning, I think that, you know, Megan and I were just completely on the same page. We were kind of struggling to get to the level that we believed we could. We both had a very deep love of figure skating. I think that we really followed the sport in a very, like, we were big fans, you know, and we knew all the history. And you know, Megan could tell you who came second in ladies at the
She's
1992
amazing.
World Championships, you know,
And the scores.
and the scores. Yeah.
She's great that way.
And so it was like this, we were like two small town kids off on this big adventure together, and we just loved, we just enjoyed the ride as much as we could. And I think that, you know, we it's funny that we both come from like a similar area in Canada, and then we both kind of had similar singles competitive careers. You know, we were both junior champions. We competed in senior. Megan went a little further than I did, but I think that it was just being on the same page. And I think, you know, when I look back, that was a key throughout our career, where when we stepped on the ice, without without it needing to be said, we both were going to do everything possible to be better than we were the day before, and to
Okay.
make sure that every time we went and did a lift or a death spiral, we were figuring out a way to make it a little better and for it to be the best. And it was sort of that methodical training, daily, weekly, and even yearly, because we were really good at like going back and analyzing why something didn't work and then trying to make those corrections. I think like that was part of our strength, and that existed right from day one.
You know, you have a great communication style. And every time that I ever talked to you guys backstage, one of the things I really appreciated was the fact that each of you would allow the other one the space to breathe and the room to be able to speak their points of view. But very, very rarely, if at any time, did I ever feel like you guys were on different pages. If there was something that went wrong in a performance, you presented yourselves as a team, that this was not your collective best skate. If you were successful, then this was your collective success. I don't know that that always works out in ice dance or in pair skating. I think that it's something that is certainly to be admired. Is there a way to get there in terms of that communication? Is there something that you would recommend to young pair skaters who are watching? I know you're doing some coaching and some choreography. So how do you help them with that?
I think that it comes down, or it comes back to that the same thing we were talking about before with like empathy and awareness. You have to think like when you're out there with your partner, your partner's doing their best. They're doing everything possible, and it's the team aspect of that type of duo team is we you win as a team and you lose as a team and you struggle as a team, and what good does it do to point fingers and be like, oh, you missed the triple Lutz. It's never you missed it, it's we missed the triple Lutz. And because maybe at this competition I fell, and at the next one Megan fell, and at the next one we both fell, and you never know. So it's I feel like it's that sort of not universal law, but it's like just what you learn as a kid. Like you're going to get a lot further remaining positive and supporting one another than you are by tearing each other down and staying in a negative headspace.
It's so interesting. Rebecca Dixon has a great comment about being good at taking criticism and pushing yourself to be better. This is an incredible skill for lots of athletes. But the other kind of really cool thing is that when you talk to Megan about stuff, it's almost as if Megan and you see it as a bit of a Jenga puzzle. It's like, okay, well, we didn't get it this time. So what else can we do to sort of up the ante so that the results will be on our side next time? So it's kind of delightful because you make me feel like all things are possible. And not everybody makes me feel that. I mean, take a look at this. It was possible and it happened.
I feel like it's a little bit of our maybe a bit of the theme of Megan and I's career and our story. I feel like we were never the chosen ones, like every once in a while, like a team comes along where everything is just perfect, and of course they have to work really hard and they have their own hurdles to overcome, but you can just see like their potential is Olympic champion, and if they don't become Olympic champions, you'd be surprised. And I feel like ours was a little bit more like we were maybe a little bit more rough around the edges compared to some of the other teams, and we weren't as we didn't have that traditional style and chemistry as other teams, but we found, just like you said, we had to find the other way. We had to find that other path that wasn't clear in order to get to where we wanted to get to, and then almost through just sheer will, prove to everybody that we deserved what the results that we got.
You definitely earned every last blessed one of them, that's for sure. And it was really wonderful to watch that whole journey. Here's a great question coming from Karen. Are you creating any compositions for skaters right now? And it's a great question because, of course, you are a beautiful musician and composer, and you had put together music for this man, Patrick Chan. So it's a natural inclination for people to think that you would be doing compositions for other people and other projects. Where are you at?
Well, during quarantine, I had a lot more time to concentrate on music and just spend at the piano. And so I've given myself a target. I'm working on an album, and I have just kind of completed the first song. I'm working with a producer and a composer in Toronto. And I have a feeling that all of my music is going to be like skatable. It's just, they kind of go hand in hand for me. And I feel that when I am composing and when I am writing, I can't help but just envision a dancer or a skater, or how somebody could move to the music and how somebody could express that music with their body. So as of right now, I haven't specifically written something for a skater, but I have a feeling that maybe down the road, once I release this album, skaters may end up skating to it.
Touch wood, touch wood.
Yeah.
Here we go. Do you know what's interesting? Certainly, I'm no capital C choreographer, but in my years as a skating coach, I certainly had to choreograph my fair number of what I call prenatal programs for the little ones. The thing is with music, in my mind, music gives you direction for what comes where. Oh, this is clearly the spinning section. This is clearly the footwork section. I want to know from the other side, from the composing side, are you thinking because you're so well versed in skating, oh, this has got to be where Patrick puts the X element, and you're building the music that way?
I wouldn't like when I composed a tribute for Megan and I worked with Julie, our choreographer,
Yep.
to kind of place the elements along the music, and I kind of built crescendos and silences and stuff, and we kind of had an idea. Okay, the throw's going to go here. This is going to be the footwork section, and that was a time where I really created it in tandem with the choreographer. I think that, you know, I also have, when I'm composing, if I have short little staccato notes somewhere, I can imagine like, you know, hopping on the toe picks, and then maybe there's like a big flourish and I can see either a jump or a death drop coming. So, but I mean, they lend themselves to one another, but I wouldn't say that I'm specifically, you know, okay, here is the spin and I'm going to do a trill or something, you know. I think that it kind of, I have the idea in my head, but the song still has to come, it still has to have that, I guess the musical integrity comes before any second thought of how a choreography would fit on it.
When I'm in the midst of a creative impulse, often it's driven by either an image or a feeling that I want to get out. And writing does that for me. When you are in the midst of a creative impulse, the inspiration is visual. Is it feeling based? Where does it come from?
I think for me, I'll find it'll come from unexpected inspiration. Maybe I'll hear, maybe I'll be listening to like a techno song, and I'll just hear like a little section of a melody or even a chord progression that I'm like, oh, that sounds really beautiful. A lot of times I'll be working on a classical song, like I'll be working on a Beethoven sonata, and sometimes I make a mistake and I'm like, oh, that sounded interesting, and then I'll just kind of start to explore that. Sometimes I can feel a switch go off, and I just start to feel that flow, and I just start to feel that creativity. And there's been times I've like walked in the door, I've put the groceries like on the floor, and I've sat down and I just have written something, and it all just comes really naturally. And I'm sure it's the same for you when you're writing. And then there's other times that I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna sit and explore on the piano, and I'll sit at the piano for an hour and a half, and I have nothing to show for it at the end. You know, I didn't tune in to that flow in that moment. And I've come to realize, like, I think I used to be disappointed in those moments. I used to be like, oh no, like, I'm not good at this. Like, I didn't write anything, even though I spent all this time here. And I've realized that it's something that you don't really get to control, and that it's a lot more chaotic, you know.
You know, I feel often as if creativity comes through me, like it gets dropped into my head and then comes out. I actually don't feel particularly responsible for it in a weird sort of way, because the moments that I've tried to sit down and write something, and I'm going to write about this, and then, you know,
Yeah.
I got nothing. And I end up being distracted by YouTube videos. And then other times, as I said, it's almost like an itch that needs to be scratched. I cannot go 1 minute more without getting these words onto a piece of paper. And I imagine that writing music is the same way.
Yeah. And, you know, I don't know if you're the same, but I find I'm my most creative just before I go to bed. Like when I just start to feel a little bit tired, it's when I feel like I could just stay up all night and just keep on going and just go with that flow. And sometimes I remember it. Sometimes I think if I know I have to be somewhere for 6 and I have to leave by 5:30, I'll get super creative at like 5:15, and then you know what I mean. I'm just like, oh, like should I call and cancel? You know, because I'm like I found like this flow, but it's usually at least enough time to get the idea down, and then I can try and develop it later on. But yeah, it's really, I think it's kind of funny how, and it's like you said, somebody described it once that all of these ideas are floating around us all the time, and it just depends on
Yeah.
who's going to reach out and pluck the idea. And I like your description of how it kind of lands on you. It's like they're flying around, and it's like a bird. It lands on your head, and you're like, oh, there it is, and then
And
it
it
gets
writes
expressed
itself.
in whatever way. Yeah.
Yeah, it almost writes itself. Is hilarious. I have a practical question because when you said to me that you're working with another composer as well as a producer, I think of multiple people trying to choreograph a program or multiple people trying to write something. And in that way, I don't really understand how that would work. If you're both composers, who's in charge of that core creative nugget?
So I think maybe a little bit more so it's me because it's my album and I write the sort of the bass and the idea and the feeling and the emotional ebb and flow. I have that picture. And the the composer that I work with, his name is Igor Vrabik, and he actually we worked together in writing the opening ceremonies for the World Championships. And then, I started talking to him more when quarantine happened and said, well, I had this idea of working on an album. He said, oh, I'd love to, help you with it. And, he's like fully graduated composer. He's done composing in film. And I always feel a little bit, because I haven't got to study music to the degree that I've wanted, I feel like an artist with limited colors to use, and I feel like you're the deeper understanding you have of musical theory and harmony and counterpoint, you have a greater palette that you can use to express your ideas. And I feel like what he does is he's helping me and teaching me. He's adding colors to my painting,
You,
and and we've just finished the first song, and it was kind of like a pilot project, and it's been very interesting. And like you said, I think I can imagine in bands, you find that balance. The keyboard player comes up with an idea, and then the singer adds the lyrics, and sometimes maybe the singer has the lyrics in his head, and the bass player comes up with like a riff, and it's like a flow. It's a team flow.
so it's like a collaboration.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about balance. Battle of the Blades last year, I saw you backstage because I was writing for them. Battle of the Blades is back, and I want to know what that experience was like for you last year. How did you like it? As I said, you've mentioned about doing some part-time coaching and some choreography for people. There was a skater who didn't know anything about figure skating. How did you bridge that gap so quickly? I thought you were great, by the way.
Um, well, I think perseverance and patience. um, it's kind of funny because I remember like when skating with Amanda, we'd be doing say a forward circle of cross cuts or crossovers, and then we would do like one circle, and then we would stop, and I would be so out of breath, and I'm like, why am I so out of shape? Like I've been training for this, and I realized it's because every time we did something, I was saying left, right, 1, 2, 1, 2. Like I was talking, you know what I mean? And that uses up a lot more breath than just skating by itself. But Battle of the Blades was an incredible experience. There was a very special energy. I'm sure it's like, it's like going to a big event with a team, and everybody's going through the same experience, and you have so many unique stories that you get to share with like a very specific group of people. Um, Making friends with NHL hockey players was something that was super cool, and
And they were so nice.
they were like amazingly nice, and I really loved that because my experience growing up with hockey players was the total opposite. So it was like just really cool to get to connect to them and hear their stories. And um, but yeah, the experience of being able to go out and perform like that was nerve-wracking and exciting. And unfortunately, getting kicked off first it was
Ugh.
extremely disappointing. But
Yeah.
as Amanda said in that moment, like we both made a lifetime friend, and I'm still in touch with her, and it was just so exciting. I loved it, and I have my fingers crossed that I get to do it again.
Do you hear that, producers? What do you think that it did for the sports of figure skating and hockey in Canada?
I mean, I think it's amazing exposure. It's also amazing. It's again, it's I can bring empathy back into it again. I think like, hearing how difficult it is to be in. I mean, I know that it's difficult to get into the NHL, but there's like they've had to overcome extreme physical like hurdles, like playing through and like extreme injuries. Um, you're on a bigger team, so if you're not on your game that night, then you're not just letting down yourself or maybe one other person. You're letting down a whole team, and it was really interesting to hear their experience. And then of course, I always loved them to be like, oh, how do you do that? Skating is so hard. Like, they all would say by the end that figure skating was way harder than hockey, and it would always give me a little bit of like satisfaction, I guess.
Me too, as it happens. Okay, one final question. In this upside down world, see what I did there? See what I did? She's upside down. Okay. But I want to know, and it's a question that I ask of all my guests, given the pandemic and all of its challenges, is there something that you can offer the younger members of our audience who are watching this? Some kind of tip, some kind of trick? And just before we do that, though, long-standing fan Ryan Stevens is so excited that Battle Blaze is back. You guys are both fierce competitors. He would love to see you and Megan against each other. I'm just saying. Another great idea.
I'm already anticipating that backstage moment where me and Megan are like that instead of that intense energy being focused together, like we're focused at each other.
I don't know who my on.
It would make for good television, I think.
It sure would. So tell me, one final tip for the young skaters who are in the audience who are eager to get back on the ice, who don't really know what the future holds. What can you help with as far as the tip is concerned?
I've been having dreams about skating, so I know like that's definitely a sign of how much I'm missing it right now, and I keep imagining that moment when I take off my guards and I step on the ice for the first time, and I get to feel the wind in my hair and that sound of the wind in your ears as you glide around the ice. And I think that we all share like that deep love of skating, and as with any difficult time, it will pass. This too shall pass, and that moment will come when things get back to that new state of normal, and we're back on the ice and you're training and we're working towards our goals again. So I think that just keeping that in mind, try to stay optimistic. This difficult time will come to an end, and before you know it, you'll be back out there with an even deeper appreciation for the sport that we love.
And it is for sure the sport that we love. You know what else we love? We love talking to you, Eric Radford. So I want to take this opportunity to say thank you for all of your insights, for talking about the music, the skating, the friendships, all of it. And I want to also take this opportunity to ask people to please subscribe to my YouTube channel and to please look and like me on Facebook, because as I've said before, I need the validation. Anyway. Eric Radford, you are a treat to talk to. Thank you so much for taking this time, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.